My name is Nora Delaney, and I was 28 when my life turned upside down. I had always been the reliable one in the family, the one who everyone came to for help, the one who took on responsibility without ever questioning it. Growing up, I was always the good daughter, the one who listened to my parents, followed the rules, and did what I could to keep the peace, but no one ever told me what the cost would be. It was a warm Saturday afternoon when I got the call. It wasn't unusual for my parents to ask me for help, but this time was different. My mom's voice on the other end of the phone was unusually calm, almost too calm. "Nora, we need to talk," she said, the words carrying a weight that instantly set my nerves on edge. I could feel the pit in my stomach grow. "What's wrong, Mom?" There was a long pause. Then, almost as if she were rehearsing, she said, "Your sister Lucy has found a house she wants to buy. We're going to need you to co-sign the mortgage. It's $500,000, Nora. It's for Lucy's future." My heart sank. A mortgage? $500,000? My mind raced. I wasn't wealthy. I had enough to get by, but I wasn't in a position to take on such a massive debt. I opened my mouth to protest, but she continued, her voice soft but firm. "Don't think of it as a burden. Think of it as your duty. You've always been the responsible one, Nora. You know how much we've sacrificed for you over the years. This is just a small way for you to give back." I sat in silence, the weight of her words pressing down on me. There it was, the familiar, suffocating guilt that always seemed to follow me. I couldn't remember the last time I had said no to my parents. I had always been the one they counted on, the one who never let them down. But this was different. This was big. This wasn't just helping them pay for a few bills or watching their house while they were away. This was a life-changing financial commitment, one I couldn't possibly afford on my own. But Lucy was their golden child. She was the one who could do no wrong. She had always been the center of their attention, the one who got all the praise, while I faded into the background. Lucy could do no wrong in their eyes. She had made questionable decisions, but they always found a way to forgive her, to bail her out. Now she was asking for $500,000, and I was being told it was my duty to help her. "Mom, I don't know," I stammered, the words coming out slowly. "I don't have that kind of money. How am I supposed to take on something like this?" "Nora," she interrupted, her voice suddenly cold. "You'll find a way. It's your responsibility as family. We're asking you because we trust you. You've always done what's right. We're relying on you." I felt my breath catch in my throat. This wasn't just a request. It wasn't just about helping Lucy. It was about maintaining the family's image, the one my parents had carefully constructed. If I didn't help, what would that say about me? "I'll think about it," I said, my voice barely a whisper. It wasn't a promise, it wasn't a decision, but it was all I could give them for now. The phone call ended, and I sat there staring blankly at the wall. The weight of their expectations pressed down on me. I had always been the one to sacrifice, the one to carry the family's burden. But this time, I wasn't sure I could do it. As the days passed, I thought more and more about the mortgage. The reality of it set in. If I co-signed, I would be on the hook for $500,000. I had no idea how I would make the payments if anything went wrong. I had no savings to fall back on. The thought of it made my stomach turn. Yet I knew what was coming. The guilt would overwhelm me. If I said no, my parents would see me as ungrateful. They would blame me for not stepping up. Lucy would never understand, and she would probably resent me for not helping her secure the life she wanted. The phone rang again the next day, and I almost didn't want to pick up. But I did. And there was my mother, once again. "Have you thought about it, Nora?" she asked, her tone too casual, too expectant. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I had to make a decision, but how? The days dragged on, and I found myself trapped in a mental tug-of-war. I knew that saying yes meant taking on a burden far beyond my financial capabilities, but I also knew that saying no could fracture my relationship with my parents forever. My mind raced constantly, trying to justify both sides. But every time I thought about it, I felt more and more suffocated. It wasn't just the money, though, that was a huge part of it. It was the expectation, the weight of being the responsible one, the one who had always kept things together. I had spent my whole life trying to be the person everyone relied on, but at what cost? I couldn't help but think back to everything I had done for my family, the countless times I had sacrificed my own happiness and financial stability to keep the peace, to maintain harmony. And for what? To be told it was my duty to shoulder a $500,000 mortgage for my sister? A sister who hadn't even asked for my help in the first place, but instead expected me to just step in and solve her problems as I always had? As I paced around my small apartment, trying to focus on work, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Lucy. I hesitated before answering, knowing this conversation would likely be no different from the others. "Hey, Nora." Her voice was cheerful, as if she hadn't a care in the world. "I've been talking to Mom and Dad. They told me you'd be the one to co-sign the mortgage for my house. You're helping me, right?" I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the conversation I knew was coming. "Lucy, I don't know if I can do this. It's a huge amount of money, and I don't think I'm in a position to take on something like this." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and I could almost picture Lucy's face, a mixture of surprise and frustration. "What do you mean you can't? You've always been the one to help, Nora. You know how much this means to me. Don't you think I deserve this? I'm not asking for a handout, just co-signing. It's your duty as my sister." The word duty hit me like a slap. It wasn't a request. It wasn't an ask for help. It was an expectation. And there it was, the foundation of everything that had made me feel so small for years. The expectation that I had to give and give without question, no matter what it cost me. I bit back the words I wanted to say. I wanted to tell her how suffocating it felt, how everything I did for this family was never enough, how she could never understand the sacrifices I had made. But instead, I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I just can't, Lucy. I've said this before. I can't afford it. And frankly, I don't know if it's even the right thing to do," I replied, my voice quieter than I intended. I had to set a boundary, I knew that, but the guilt still twisted in my stomach. "You're really going to make me ask Mom and Dad again?" she asked, the irritation creeping into her voice. "They're already stressed out about this, and now you're making it harder. You're supposed to support me, Nora. After everything I've been through, don't I deserve a chance at a better life?" I felt a wave of guilt crash over me. Of course she deserved a better life, but so did I. And that's when it hit me. I had spent my entire life putting everyone else's needs before my own, sacrificing pieces of myself so they could have more, so they could feel secure. But it had never been enough for them. I was always the one who had to give. I sat down on the edge of my couch, rubbing my temples. "Lucy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I've always supported you, but this is too much. I can't take on that responsibility. You have to understand this isn't just about helping you, it's about my future too." She was quiet for a moment, then responded in a softer voice. "I get it. I didn't mean to pressure you, but this house is my chance, Nora, and you're the only one I can count on." I ended the call soon after, feeling emotionally drained. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the emotional manipulation. My sister, my parents, they all expected me to give without questioning, to always be there when they needed me. But this time, I couldn't. This time, I had to draw a line. It wasn't an easy decision. It never would be. But I realized something important. I had to stop being the one everyone leaned on at my own expense. My future mattered. My happiness mattered. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't hear from my parents or Lucy, and I wondered if they were trying to let things settle before the inevitable confrontation. But I knew that the moment they came back to me, I would have to stand my ground. I wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. When my phone buzzed again a few days later, I knew it was time. It was my mom. I felt the familiar knot in my stomach, but this time, I was ready. The phone call came exactly when I expected it, a few days after I'd spoken to Lucy. My mother's name lit up the screen, and I felt the weight of what was about to happen. My hand trembled slightly as I answered. "Nora." My mother's voice was strained, yet there was a subtle expectation in it, the same tone she always used when she wanted something. "We need to talk." I sat up straighter, trying to steady myself. This was it, the moment where I would either stand firm or give in. I took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said, Mom. I can't co-sign that mortgage. I just can't afford it, and it's too much responsibility." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear my mother exhale heavily. "Nora, you're the only one who can help. It's your duty. Don't you care about your sister's future?" Her voice quivered slightly, but it wasn't with concern. It was with a guilt trip she had perfected over the years. "Mom, I've already helped you both more times than I can count. This isn't just about money, it's about me too," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've always been the one who made sacrifices for this family, but I can't keep doing it. I have my own future to think about now." My mom's tone shifted, becoming cold and sharp. "So, you're just going to leave your sister hanging? After everything we've done for you? How could you be so selfish, Nora? You know your sister needs this. She can't do it alone." The words stung, but I couldn't let them break me. It wasn't my fault that they had always relied on me. They had never given me the chance to be anything other than the reliable one, the one who picked up the pieces when everything fell apart. But that was my choice, wasn't it? My decision to stay silent, to shoulder all their burdens without ever asking for anything in return. But not anymore. "Mom, I am not selfish for wanting something of my own," I said, my voice firmer now. "I love Lucy, but I can't be the one to fix everything for her. She has to take responsibility for her own life just like I had to do. You need to stop relying on me for everything." I could hear my mother's breath catch, and for a moment, there was silence. I could almost picture her, sitting there, her eyes narrowing as she processed what I was saying. Finally, she spoke again, this time with an edge of finality in her voice. "You've changed, Nora. I don't know what happened to you, but you're not the daughter I raised. This isn't how family works. You're supposed to help us, not turn your back on us when we need you the most. You've made your choice." Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I wasn't sure if she was hurt or angry, but I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just a phone call anymore. It was the moment when I had to stop being the good daughter who always put others first. It was time for me to start living for myself. "I'm not turning my back on you," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. "But I have to take care of myself now. I've spent too many years doing everything for everyone else. It's time to make my own decisions." The conversation ended with nothing more than silence. I didn't know if she had understood or if she was still angry at me. But I knew that I had done the right thing. The burden I had carried for so long had been lifted, and I felt the weight of it fade from my shoulders. I had set my boundary, and I had done it for myself. Over the next few days, things became tense. My parents didn't reach out, and Lucy didn't try to contact me either. I expected anger, maybe even a backlash. I had made a choice that would change everything. But strangely, it felt like the calm before the storm. The silence was uncomfortable, but I knew that my family needed time to process my decision. However, as the days passed, my guilt started creeping in. What if they really needed me? What if I had done the wrong thing? What if I had ruined everything? But then I thought about how much of my life had been dictated by their needs. How much of my own happiness had been put on hold because I always felt obligated to take care of them. What was I supposed to do? Spend my whole life living for their approval? For Lucy's happiness? My happiness mattered too, didn't it? That night, I went for a walk to clear my mind. The cool evening air felt refreshing as I wandered through the quiet streets. I thought about the future, about the life I wanted to build. The one thing that had become clear to me in the past few weeks was that I didn't want to be tied down by guilt anymore. I didn't want to be the person who always put everyone else first and never gave myself the chance to live my own life. As I walked, a thought struck me. If I kept trying to please everyone, I would lose myself completely. And that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to let guilt or their expectations control my life anymore. It was a week later when I finally heard from Lucy. Her message was simple, but the tone was unmistakable. She was angry. She accused me of abandoning her, of being selfish and uncaring, and how I didn't understand the struggles she was facing. She said she was trying to make a life for herself, and I was holding her back from her chance at happiness. Reading her words, I felt a sting in my chest. I had been the one who always helped her out, even when I didn't have enough to give. I had sacrificed so much for this family, but now it was all falling apart. I was being blamed for something that wasn't even my fault. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, fighting the overwhelming urge to give in, to send her the money and solve everything like I had always done. I was so used to being the one who fixed things, the one who made everything better. But something inside me had changed. This time, I couldn't keep sacrificing myself just to keep the peace. I couldn't let her or anyone else use me like this anymore. I set the phone down and took a few deep breaths, trying to calm myself. I thought about my parents' expectations, the way they had manipulated me all my life. They had always known how to make me feel guilty, how to make me feel like I owed them, like I had to give everything for them to be happy. I had been so blind to how toxic it was until now. It wasn't love, it was control. The next day, I met with my lawyer. I had made the decision to take a stand, to protect myself and my future. The loan papers sat on the table in front of me, the weight of the decision looming over me. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to let my parents or Lucy guilt me into doing otherwise. They had overstepped, and now I was going to set the boundaries I had never set before. "We can get this sorted," the lawyer said, looking over the documents. "If you want to protect yourself, we'll have to make sure they understand that this is your decision, and they no longer have control over your financial life." It was empowering to hear those words. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about finally taking back the control I had handed over for years. The process would be difficult, no doubt. The family was going to be angry, but they were going to have to deal with it. As I walked out of the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of relief that I hadn't felt in years. The weight of my parents' and Lucy's expectations had been lifted, even if only for a moment. But I knew I had made the right choice. This was my life, and I wasn't going to let them control it anymore. The phone calls didn't stop, though. My parents reached out, accusing me of betrayal, saying how much I was hurting them. Lucy texted me again, this time more desperate, telling me that everything was falling apart and that I was the only one who could save her. The guilt swelled in me, but I refused to let it consume me again. They had their chance, and I wasn't going to throw my future away just to appease them. It wasn't until a week later that things took a turn I hadn't expected. I received a letter from my parents. It wasn't a text or a phone call. This was different. They had written me a letter, something formal, something they had probably carefully thought through. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what I would find inside. The letter was brief, but the words cut through me. My parents expressed their disappointment in me, how they had always done so much for me, and how I was now turning my back on them when they needed me most. They blamed me for tearing the family apart and made it clear that I had failed them. The words stung, but at the same time, there was something else, something I hadn't expected. They were using my guilt again, but this time I recognized it for what it was. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They weren't taking responsibility. They were manipulating me, trying to pull me back into their world where I was only valuable if I gave them what they wanted. And just like that, something shifted inside me. I was done. The letter went into the trash, and I didn't look back. I had done enough for them. I had given them my time, my energy, my money, everything I had, and still, it was never enough. But this was enough. I had taken back my power, and for the first time in my life I felt like I could breathe again. The battle wasn't over, the emotional toll was still there, and I knew it would take time to heal, to move forward. But in that moment, I knew that I had done the right thing. I had taken control of my life, and no one was going to take that from me again. The days following my decision were strange. The silence from my parents was deafening. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trying to fix things. I wasn't running around trying to make everyone happy, trying to smooth over the tensions. The world didn't fall apart without me being their emotional caretaker. It was quiet, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I focused on my own life, for once. I had always put my family's needs above my own, but now I had the space to finally think about what I wanted. The mortgage battle with my sister Lucy was far from over, but I knew deep down that I had made the right decision. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their toxic cycle of guilt and manipulation. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Lucy. Her voice was different this time, calmer, but filled with something I hadn't heard from her in a while. Regret. "Nora," she said softly, "I've been thinking about everything, and I realize now that I was wrong. You're right. I shouldn't have put that pressure on you. I understand why you said no. I didn't mean to make you feel like you owed me everything." I was taken aback by her words. This wasn't the Lucy I knew. She had always been so entitled, so sure that I would fix things for her. But now she was apologizing. It was unexpected, and yet, something about it felt genuine. I paused for a moment before responding. "Lucy, I know you were just trying to build a life for yourself, but you can't keep relying on others to make that happen. You have to take responsibility for your own choices. I had to learn that the hard way." There was a long silence, and then I heard her quietly say, "I'm sorry, Nora. I've been selfish. I don't want to lose you over this." For the first time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, Lucy was starting to understand. Maybe she was finally seeing what I had been trying to say all along, that I wasn't just a tool for fixing everyone's problems, that I had my own life, my own dreams, and my own needs. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to respect that. The conversation ended with an unspoken understanding between us. I wasn't sure if we would ever be the same, but for the first time, I felt like I wasn't carrying the weight of the family on my shoulders anymore. My relationship with Lucy had shifted, but it was still my choice to make. Whether or not I wanted to repair things, I wasn't going to force it. As for my parents, there was no contact from them. The silence had continued, and I had stopped waiting for an apology. I had let go of the expectation that they would ever truly understand the depth of the hurt they had caused me. I knew that they would never change, but that was no longer my problem to solve. It was a few months later when I looked back and realized how far I had come. I had stopped seeking their approval, and I had stopped sacrificing my happiness for their sake. I was finally living for myself. And the thing I hadn't expected was that life had started to feel better, lighter, and more authentic. My career was moving forward. I was investing time in friendships that brought me joy, not guilt. And I was spending more time with my children, showing them what it meant to set boundaries and stand up for yourself. I was finally showing them that they didn't have to carry anyone else's emotional burdens. It wasn't perfect, and there were still days when I felt the sting of their rejection. But with each passing day, the pain lessened. And what took its place was something I had never experienced before: peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that you are enough, just as you are, and you don't have to prove it to anyone. One day, I received a message from my mother. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a direct message. She just wrote, "I hope you're happy." It was as close to an acknowledgement as I would ever get, and it was enough. I didn't need her validation anymore. I had already found my own. And so I moved forward, knowing that I had finally taken control of my own life, and that was the greatest gift I could give myself.